So, count for me then.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
No one gave you permission to stop.
Oh shit. There we go.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Swords, Balls and Beards, episode 23.
Oh, damn.
You will find we are lacking a beard. Not just because I have started shaving, but because Adam, bless him, Orky Adam, that is off with the plague at the moment. So get well soon, Adam. We hope you rest up. In the meantime, we have a voice that's not my own.
It's not your own, but it does have a beard.
It does have a beard. So to make up for the lack of beard, this isn't Swords, Balls and lack of beard. We have a beard that you can't see because it's an audio podcast. However, it's connected to the gaming guru that is Toby, who's come back to not talk electronic gaming.
For once.
I know, I'm sorry to break the cycle.
Well, we'll see how it goes. I'll be able to drag it there eventually.
Okay. Toby's coming to talk to us, very interestingly, about improv. We were going to do a different episode this week, and Adam falling ill threw everything into a quandary, what we should do. And so we're going to improvise this episode, ironically, about improvisation, because it's relevant to the week we've had. And I thought Toby was a really good guest to come on board and talk about this, which we'll get to in a second. How are you, sir?
I am doing okay. I am fresh out of ideas, which is why I have to improv absolutely everything. But
How was work today?
it happened. I had to yell at teenagers.
Classic.
I know, it's a bag. But I did get pizza.
So it swings and roundabouts. Toby's literally walked in the door from his work and said, "Right, let's record." It's like the enthusiasm was second to none. Thank you for coming on and being a guest. You were going to be a guest with us anyway.
Yeah, I
and
get
we've
to
absolutely
double
changed
down.
topic about improvisation.
Thank God I didn't do any research.
Thank God you improvised.
Yeah!
You'd have improvised the episode.
We're keeping it on theme.
The reason that I thought it'd be really good to talk about doing a kind of a new theme, a new thing on this podcast. You'll know we do a lot of different things. We talk about RPGs, as Toby's come on before. We've talked about computer games. We talked about movies. I did my top 10 movies last week, and we talked about a lot of different things. And one of the things we started this on was about role-playing games and how to role-play and what makes a good game and what doesn't. And I did an episode very long time ago. It feels like it. With my sister about playing role plays with just one other person. So we do GM tips every now and then, and I thought I'd start a new section called Going Back to School. It's a bit tragic. It's one of those things I always sidebars. You know, when kids go back to school but they haven't left school yet and the shops are already advertising.
Oh, yeah.
It just sucks. But going back to school with some GM tips on how to run. So we're running an improv class today. About how to run a game when everything goes out the window. Because I thought it'd be a good topic to come back to as a GM, not just. So the reason I asked Toby to do this with me isn't just because Adam isn't here, but because last week, Toby, you ran our household
Indeed.
a D&D game where halfway through, I DM more than I play, and halfway through you looked across the table and went, no, it was at the very end.
Yeah.
You went, well, I just made all of that up because it went, whatever expression it went pear-shaped, it went out the window, it went...
There's no way it wouldn't include a swear, but yeah.
Yeah. So I thought, okay, that's interesting because from a player's perspective, it was really smooth, which is a compliment to you.
Good to know.
It went really, really well. So I thought it'd be interesting to talk through what that meant to you. Now we're clearly without spoilers for the rest of the campaign, that particular session.
Yeah.
Where did it go wrong? And how did you choose to fix it? And then later down the line, we're going to add in our top tips as to how to improv if you want to. So, tell the ladies and gentlemen at home about your campaign. Let's start with that.
So as a basis, it was the second iteration from the Tales from the Golden Vault book. So if you don't know, that book is made up of a bunch of different one-shots that can be strung together to make one whole campaign if you want, but they're separated out. So they can all be played independently, and they're all separated out nicely for like level 1, level 2, level 3. Really nice if you want to just like, I feel like running a one-shot. How powerful would I feel like being? And then it's set up for you. This one, in the second one, because we'd already finished the first, I've done a couple here and there. Second one, as a base level, you are going into a casino, trying to steal some things. Simple as that. Doesn't have to be any more than that.
It's Ocean's 11.
Yeah, but with a circus and some other bits for some reason.
Some demonic theming.
Yeah, it's a very cool concept for a casino. The idea is that each different like area is themed around a different part of hell, or the hells in D&D. So you start out at Avernus, then you go to Dis or wherever else. And it's all themed that way, and you can play it however you want. Obviously, improv, yada yada. The way that the game wants you to run it is the main thing you want to steal is, in the default book, is just a golden statue. Real simple, just shiny hunk of valuable metal. That is the main prize for a tournament. Now, the book has it set out real simple, right through who wins the competition, down to like a full complete scoreboard of which NPCs win the competition, unless players interfere. All sorts of things. There's a couple different unique games in there. Like there's one called Life or Death, which is just higher or lower basically, but like they bother to give you games the players can actually involve themselves with. And there's not too much combat. It's much more of a role-playing one in the grand scheme.
Which you wanted, because the first game we ran, the first mission...
Yeah, the first mission, there's an alarming amount of enemies for a level 1 campaign. There's like way too many in my opinion.
I went to the basement on my own with a mimic.
Yeah, well the thing is, in the default book, because I changed it, because I made you fight a lesser mimic, because again, you're level 1, but in the default book, there are 3 sets of animated armor, 1 mimic, 1 Allosaurus, like 12 guards, and then the potential for an eldritch monstrosity if you mess up the campaign, plus any improv if you get into fights with like basic NPCs, anything like that. Then a scarecrow that's hidden somewhere. Like that's
this is level 1.
All in a level 1 campaign. And technically speaking, you can activate all of these at once if you mess up bad
and
enough.
It's the other interesting thing, and I've just thought this.
Yeah.
It's all one building.
It's all one building.
It's not like it's spread over a
No, it's not a battlefield. It's one building.
3 floors.
Which you can access really quite simply, apart from, I guess, the basement. But like, it's an open concept because it's a museum. It's huge, and like, it's cool because like odds are you wouldn't activate them all at once. But the fact it's technically possible, all at level 1, like any of those fights are tough as a level 1 party. Because realistically, especially if it's your first campaign, if it's like, oh, let's dip my toe in the water to see what it's like, that's so much to understand right away. But second one, which is called the Strigan Gambit or something, I forget what it's actually professionally called. First one's the Murkmire Malevolence, I remember that. But yeah, second one is much more RPG focused. There's some combat, there's some guards around the place. In the final step, if you choose to loot the vault, because that's another goal, there's a skeleton minotaur in there. And then the owner of the casino himself, who's your big bad. They're all there, but that's it. Way less enemies. They're pretty intimidating ones. The casino owner can summon 2 demons, but they're only imps, so there is stuff, but slightly less. But way less overall. It's much more of a role-playing campaign.
So that in itself,
it's a lot going on.
It's a lot going on, but it doesn't sound. So your goals, we were given this job by a third party.
Yeah,
they wanted us to basically screw over the casino owner because they've been shafted themselves.
Yeah, that is still how it's written officially.
And they wanted us to basically, if we could, win the competition that was going on there,
or just grab stuff,
or both,
if
we felt the need. So.
One thing that's really interesting about it, honestly, off the get-go, is the Tales from the Golden Vault is made for you to be able to improv quite a lot. Because if you want to string into one campaign, you're technically working for the organization, the Golden Vault.
Yeah.
And you'll get your missions dispatched magically by a music box. You have a music box with you, and each time there's a mission, a key will appear. You use it in the music box, it will play your mission, and then self-destruct style, it will then close, and the key will go away so no one else can hear it. Which is a pretty cool concept.
Tom Cruise, are you listening? This should be in the new last film.
Yeah, absolutely. Who needs space when you have nerds?
That should be on the poster.
But yeah, so you can do that, or you can just go, they hear this from a person or whatever, which is nice. But even then, it's one of the only campaigns written out officially by Dungeons & Dragons or anyone else where you don't actually have to complete the goal. It's really weird. So it's written out, they ask you to either steal the statue through winning or stealing whatever, get the stuff in the vault, one or the other, or neither. It's actually written in the book. If you fail at both, they're disappointed, but they express willingness to work with you in the future. That's how it's written, which is really bizarre, because obviously you don't get paid, but there's not like a negative. You can just technically just walk away and go, nah, that looks too hard, and there somehow won't be repercussions.
That'd be a great campaign.
Yeah.
No, we can't be bothered. End of game.
The most apathetic party ever.
No, we go to the pub.
But it's like, yeah, they're like, yeah, no, I'll work with you in the future. I know you did literally nothing, but I mean, yeah, whatever. Which is really weird, but it works for improv. If something goes absolutely arse up, it doesn't necessarily mean you're written out of potential stuff in the future. I imagine, like, from the actual campaign perspective, it's so that the Golden Vaults organization, if you go that route, don't go, yeah, you're terrible, we want you out. But it's still, I've never seen it anywhere else, which is really weird.
So with this particular story, what had you expected us, before it all went out the window, what had you thought would happen? What were you queuing up that we then didn't do at all?
So I wrote out a bunch of stuff because I just didn't care. And then I left a bunch of stuff to improv in general. So in the casino at some point, for some reason, don't know why, there's a circus. Straight up. And it's,
it had animals and everything.
Yeah, they had animals and everything and performers and whatnot. But it's really weird to play in because it's written as every 4 hours there's a 1 hour show. I don't, like, in theory, I'm assuming, like, the only thing I can think of is, we went and watched a show and that counts as a short rest, maybe. But I can't think of why else they would do it. And I guess the idea of every 4 hours means you can't do it every time. But then why couldn't you just take a short rest, like, in the bar or something? It doesn't make a lot of sense. So stuff like that, didn't care about. I wrote out the NPC competitors because I assumed you guys would want to go and have fun gambling and actually playing the games, which you did, admittedly. So I rewrote the competition entirely to actually make it relatively difficult, so you didn't just do it in 10 minutes. There were some games that I thought you'd care about more that you missed. There was a little mini racetrack with rats in it. I assumed that...
We didn't explore that much.
No, you didn't.
We'll come to that.
Yeah, you very much went straight to it, but I assumed one of your characters, in the way that you played it, pretty much everyone but you, I assumed someone would go animals and just have that kind of stereotypical moment of, oh, look at the cute rats. But you didn't. You guys just kind of went right into it. And then while half of you went to play, the other half of you went to go sneaky and ironically fucked that up marvelously.
I'll have you know.
I'll have you know I was there. But no, so I expect you guys to play. Some of you did. I expected you to try and sneak off at some point. I didn't expect you to do it quite the way you did, which is why. So when
So for context for everyone listening, two of us did go gambling and started the competition to win the competition itself. By the way, Toby described it to us as players. Was there are various games you had to play and you level up. In the final round, if you got through, you'd end up playing the boss who owns the casino.
Wholeheartedly improv all of that.
Okay, interesting. So I'll record. That's what we were told. So that was happening, and then two of us were going to try and sneak in the back room and get to the vault.
Yeah.
And cause a distraction. That did happen. Was that meant to happen?
So you can go all the way through to get to the vaults. That's fine. What you did differently was there's not actually much interaction with the big boss. So the big bad, supposedly, the guy was trying to screw over, it's called Quentin Togglepocket. He is a gnome that basically stole from your benefactor, contractor, whatever, and you're trying to get your stuff back. There's really not much written interaction with him. He's lawful evil, etc., etc. Doesn't have much. The only interesting is if you go and confront him. If you go and confront him, you can do one of two primary things. One of them is you just try and attack him, where he will say a prayer to Mammon and actually summon two demons, which is the only mention of him being canonically like in some kind of partnership with an actual Lord of Hell. They just really casually just put that out there. If you then kill the demons, he will then call for guards, and then you can fight him that way. Doesn't really do anything. It's not written if your contractor cares if he dies or anything, but that's what he does. The only other thing is he will question you. Like, I think the way that they want him to be played is you walk in and he's kind of like, I'm so important, you don't threaten me, I'll like buy you out. Like that kind of mafia boss kind of aesthetic.
Yeah.
So if he questions you and you tell him the truth, he will offer to pay you double your fee to take a letter back to your contractor saying nah, essentially.
The mature response.
Yeah, so he will pay you, I think 200 gold, something like that, to just take a letter back. That I don't remember exactly what it says, but it's basically just like, I'm really disappointed you didn't have the balls to do this yourself anymore, kind of thing.
Okay.
And that's basically what there is on him. There's not too much else. He doesn't have loot or anything if you kill him. That would like, you'd have to improv separately. And that's it. That's all you have to do with him. So because you immediately, by chance, went to his office, I was like, all right, well, it gives me a way to introduce it because it doesn't make sense to leave it. So you immediately went to interact with them. I didn't want you to immediately skip to the, everyone's against me, because you'd only been playing for like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, how can we introduce this guy, kind of give him something, and then send you back out so that you can't immediately get to the vault and just like, oh yeah, we're done, kind of thing. So all of that stuff, literally everything to do with him for the entire session we had was improvised.
Okay.
None
That
of it
was to slow us down from just being able to get to the vault.
Essentially, yeah, because the map is for the thing itself. It's a very big space in terms of combat. It's like 300 feet long, plus all of the back rooms with the vault and all that stuff. But realistically, it's all one space, so it's quite small. If you wanted to, and if you had specifically spec'd your character a certain way, I'm sure you literally could have gone, I don't know, haste, invisibility, run your way through, grab what you needed, head out. You probably could have done that in like no time at all. You wouldn't have even necessarily needed to start combat, as long as you got the security pass, which you can get off literally any employee. It's written that every single one has one.
So as long as you can steal it off them, bribe them for it or something.
As long as you know that they have one, realistically, if you'd played this before and were trying to intentionally speedrun it, you could probably go, right, desk, grab, run, don't care about combat, straight through, back out, bosh. And that's technically the maximum you need to do. In theory, you don't even necessarily need a keycard. If you get yourself arrested, you can get taken backstage anyway. I don't know how you'd get out, but I mean, you can access the vault without...
There is security cells, aren't there? Within
there's security
like
cells and quote-unquote security mirrors, aka cameras, around the place. But yeah, it's not actually that hard. The campaign itself is kind of designed where you don't know what you're doing intentionally, so you slow yourselves down by like focusing on the tournament.
Which we didn't do, which is why you had to improvise. Because in the end, two of us, as I say, went in to play the game, but not necessarily other. We didn't explore like you thought we would. And two of us were literally, right, I just need to get past or someone.
Well, the interesting thing was, because a lot of when I improv, because you guys will usually... Which is, it's really convenient. You guys will usually plan beforehand. You guys will actually talk it out instead of doing it on the fly, because you guys prefer to. Whether you stick to that plan is a separate thing, but you will usually talk it out. So what I'll do, if you're like, we're going to arrive at this place in 10 minutes, I know I have some time to kind of start focusing, then I'll just listen to you guys do it. You guys were like really talking about like going to the laundry room or the bathhouse to try and get changed to a guard uniform. So I was like, okay, that part of the map, probably going to see some attention. You didn't end up going there at all.
No.
You just didn't bother, which is fine. But then it's like, oh, okay, so where else are you going to go? Because you also didn't go to the circus, other than that one time.
Sharon went there
to
try and release the animals into the fold to cause a distraction.
Which didn't work, because every single one of the guards in there is uses the thug stat block, which doesn't matter too much. The only issue is they all have like 32, 36 health, something like that, which is like a decent amount, all things considered, and remembering you're level 2. But more importantly, every single one of them has pack tactics as a passive, which means as long as there is one of them, as long as there's one other one of them nearby that isn't incapacitated, so even if it's just a pair of them, they get advantage on attack rolls against you just by being near each other, which is just quite a lot at level 2, because you don't have the armor cost to withstand that most of the time. But like, I didn't prep anything for the circus because I didn't really know what to do with it. I'd have just ended up going, yeah, you watch the show, it's fun, here's your short rest, whatever. Because there's not much you can do with that. But yeah, on the fly stuff like running into Quentin and him sending you back out into the tournament area, I always find really useful, because then it's that you've made progress, even if it's not the way you wanted to go, and I've made progress because now I know where you're going because I've told you where to go, kind of thing.
Okay. Yeah.
Which is always very useful. The easiest way I have it is with all of my improv. If I've done it right, it was always that way. If you can't tell that it's not always been that way, then it's always been that way. At that point, it doesn't matter. It's written down. I made notes about it weeks ago, even if I made it up 2 seconds ago.
No, that's just it. And at the end of the day, if we've had fun, and that's where the home brewing comes in. I remember speaking to someone once who said they were a DM and they said they can't improvise.
Yeah.
It's like, how can you DM if you can't?
It doesn't, like, books give you a lot, but just not enough.
And it ends up being on the rails a little bit. And yes, here's a room.
And it's like it's weirdly easier to improv. I like having a map. I like having a layout, because then at least I know that you have limitations as well as myself. I can always add stuff on later, but at least there are literally hard walls in your way. But like for the campaign we did, I've been yapping about. I literally didn't like. I started trying to look at the book, and after a while, like I just looked at the map. I didn't check notes. I didn't bother with anything other than stat blocks because it's just easy to go. Okay, you're there. What's next to you there? You know what's always been there? That also thing that definitely is on the map. 100%. Trust me.
Yeah, because if you want someone to find something and they never ever, if you need someone to find something, we're having this conversation before we started recording. One of the tips, which we'll go back to, but one of the tips was like, if you need that information imparted and they don't go to where it is in the book, if you're running a module, just move it. If you planned it at homebrew and you've like, well, Doris at the pub over there is going to tell you some news.
Yeah,
Doris just has a job change or a move to another city. There's always ways to improvise and make it work. I know that
they're always there.
With the, you're right, with the map point of view, when I was running an Alien campaign with a group of friends, and they give you the blueprints, the way that aliens, the maps look like building blueprints, sci-fi building blueprints. And they're good for a feel, and they'll tell you what's in each room, etc., 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 as these things do. But the moment that I showed the map to my friends that were playing with me, they started spotting the tiny little details on the map, which blew the flow. Because all of a sudden, I want to check that tiny manhole cover. It's like, you don't need to check that tiny manhole cover.
Yeah.
If you want to move to that space, it broke immersion, it broke flow, because actually it's squaring.
Yeah, maps like that are really interesting because in the official book, in Tales of the Golden Vault, I'm just going to keep going back to that because it's pretty good for improv and new players and stuff like that. There's always a minimum 2 maps. There's the player map and then there is the DM map. Now the DM map is detailed, it's labelled with all the rooms, it connects to the parts of the books, there's obstacles, there's all of those tiny things that players could go to. The player map, unless they find an additional one elsewhere, which isn't included in all of them, is usually a handwritten one by the contractor. It's a very, very basic.
And that's the way it's drawn in the book, isn't it?
Yeah, it's literally drawn in the book.
It's a nice feel to it because it's like
and I like giving you guys both eventually because then by the time you've got the hang of the space, it's like even if you hadn't,
you'd have seen it for yourself.
Yeah, you'd have seen it for yourself. So it makes sense. You're no longer going off a crayon one. Like if I go into a new house, whatever it may be, I'm like, oh, I'm not sure where my bedroom is when I first move in. I don't need a map to get me there by day 2.
Yeah.
Like you just know.
Yeah.
But convenient. There's a bunch of online resources where they will delabel and just scrub clean the DM map, so you get a nice detailed one that doesn't have labels, which is nice. But yeah, eventually I'm sure that problem comes up where eventually like, oh, that has to be on the map for a reason. It's like no, sometimes things are just there. Like the case in this one, which you didn't end up going to, is there was actually a restaurant downstairs.
Yes.
With the like complete menu, full menu, full setup, no NPCs written for it, but like enough content there for it to exist as a restaurant. There's nothing down there, but like they added a whole menu, stuff like that. The only way of seeing that on the map is there's a tiny trap door off on the right hand side, and that's the only mention of it. Like at all, because it's downstairs. You can't see any of it. So sometimes those details are useful, but sometimes it's like, oh, what's that crate? It's just a crate. It's fine. Like you want to fill up your map with cool things, but then if you get players that think everything's relevant, then suddenly everything has to be relevant, and then the quality of everything goes down because just because it's relevant doesn't mean it's good because you were the one that made it relevant.
Yes. Yeah.
Kind of like quality over quantity type thing with these kinds of things.
So with this game, what was there a point when we were playing Sunday, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Playing on Sunday when you sat there and not in a panicked way, but kind of went shit, and then had to. I know you said you've improvised and changed things. Was there a point when you had to kind of go, I really wasn't expecting, and then took it off on a tangent?
The closest thing I got to that was when you were trying to disguise yourself, because Quentin is actually written. One of his passives is it's called like What Brings You Here or something, but it's basically he knows every single one of his staff like directly, so he's like, so like you cannot disguise yourself past him or something like that. And when you immediately went for that route and like you improvised something of like, oh, it's like a security check, it's like, okay, well that's like a decent line, but then the campaign is very much written about like you not being able to get past him. So figuring out a way to kind of reward that initiative of being like, yeah, here's an actual reason I should be here, instead of just like, no, I'm supposed to be, because you made efforts in that, and it's like you did pretty decent on your deception checks. What's a way of rewarding that without immediately just letting you bypass that struggle just on one roll? Especially if it's a direction I didn't want you to go yet. Because if I just let you pass that, you could have got to the vault immediately, no problem. And again, that's like half an hour session. It's like, oh, all right. Which is why I gave the token to the tournament and sent you off that way. Which again is not written in the books anywhere. So that was the closest I got to that. There was a couple points where it's like, you're not going to succeed anywhere doing this. Like when I forget the character's name. What's Mum's character's name? Brenna or something.
Me too. I forget.
Yeah, I think it's like Brenna or something. The point is, she went off to the circus, and there's nothing up there. I know there's nothing up there. Even if there was, it's not progress. But that's fine, because if they want to do that, then they can find that out one way or another, and then they'll come back down. But past that, there has yet to be a point. There's points where I can see you're doing something that won't benefit you, and I can either try and like, oh yeah, that was never there, just cross it out, or try and steer you away. But there's never been a point where I've been like, oh, this is unsalvageable. Because realistically, there's always something you can do, even if you just on the fly, like, oh look, an NPC.
I know you obviously said that you praised, you took my initiative of basically in this thing, I disguised myself as a guard. So Toby was saying the boss knows every guard by name or by at least face.
Yeah.
And I didn't disguise myself as someone I'd seen. I just picked a random. They all had to be tieflings, and I just disguised myself as a tiefling. I didn't pick one, so I looked like a stranger. And later in the campaign, when I clocked that he knew all the staff, I picked someone that I knew had left for the night, left his shift, and came back and chose him. And you just said that you did praise that improv because you could see actually it was a good idea, it had merit to it, even if it wasn't going to completely work.
Yeah.
So giving me, basically you let me, as a character, jump into the queue of the competition.
Yeah.
So the competition had 2 stages, the main floor and then the last 3 rounds. So you gave me the token as if I'd already won on the main floor.
Yeah.
To get into the
knockout.
You got me through to knockout stages of this competition, in
Yeah.
fact, for free. Because I didn't play anything. I didn't play any of the gambling until that point.
The way I was going to do it is essentially you play enough to kind of make enough money to be like, oh, you're clearly a serious player. Should you want to enter the competition we have going today? And then 3 rounds of competition, and then your final boss, which would get you face to face with Quentin one way or another. But yeah, so I just basically gave you the first round token. So first of all, you got in and finished the first round, so you only have to win 2 more games after that.
And here's a question: If Sharon, if Mum had taken her plan, I think, was to try and release the circus animals into the casino to cause chaos as a distraction. If she'd have managed that through hell or high water, would you have let it happen and improvised with that chaos to let her sneak in?
I mean, I would have let her try and sneak in. I don't think it would have caused much chaos. The circus is written where...
You don't think 4 baboons or 3 baboons running around a monkey show?
No, but I'll tell you why. Because the circus is written, there's 3 tiefling performers in there, but there's actual loot in the room that she didn't bother looking for, including potions and scrolls and that of animal friendship and things like that. So the tieflings are actually written to not necessarily have tamed the animals, but to literally work with them as closely as you can with animals, with magic and all that. So essentially, like, oh, they got out. Okay, they're going to come back. They know their job. They get fed if they do this. So it would have given her a chance to sneak, potentially, but they are written as such kind of well-organized professionals that it's not like they would have torn through the casino. And again, even in the D&D world, it's like a few monkeys in the grand scheme of things for an illicit underground casino. It's not actually going to bat too many eyes.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't want to immediately, because if, for example, that was the first thing you did, I wouldn't want to immediately go, oh, there's ridiculous chaos. Everyone leaves the casino.
Yeah.
Now what? You can't play any of the games. You can't interact with most of the NPCs that are in there because they're gone.
So here's a follow-on question from your campaign.
Yeah.
When did you, as a player and or DM, first encounter the need to improv? And I don't mean this lightly, because obviously every game you'll make it up as you go.
Yeah.
But I mean, when did you first really kind of either go, ah, or, okay, I could do this? Do you remember?
Yeah, I don't think there's ever been a point where I've been probably panicked about it. But when I went to, for context, we have family that lives over in Rome. We are over in England. So I went with Blake, and Nadia specifically asked, can we play some D&D when I went over? Because I always ask before I go if there's anything she wants to specifically do. So I was like, oh yeah, sure, we can do this. Blake said that he wanted to try some out at some point. I can try and do something simple. So I made them their characters, did whatever, but I could only bring so many resources over to Rome, and it would only be the 2 of them, so it'd be tricky anyway. But because I had so little resources, I had to, like, I didn't improv the entire thing. It was another thing from Tales from the Golden Vault. It was Clockworth Clockworths or something. It's like the level 5 or 6 campaign. Quite a good one. But for the most part, because they didn't know what they were doing, I had to make it a lot nicer for them. So I had to scrap quite a lot of it, because even though the characters might have been powerful enough, they weren't good enough at D&D to actually kind of
as players.
Like, the kind of thing was like when if it's like, for example, if you play an RPG for the first time, if you log into Skyrim or Fallout or whatever.
See, we got the game.
We got it
eventually.
We got it, but it's like for instance, I've been trying Avowed recently, which is brand new. And it's like, it's nothing fantastic, but it's fun. But it's like, just that first time of figuring out the puzzles, once you get into it, you're fine. But if it's your first time doing it, it doesn't matter. It's still as difficult as it can possibly be, even if it's a simple puzzle, because the first time you do it, it's the hardest it's going to be. So I had to do a lot of that, where I had to wear it down and just figure out things like that. But past that, improving NPC dialogue is absolutely the most like significant part, because realistically, that is a solid 80-90% of most NPCs. Because like most conversation, I don't script full conversations. Sometimes it's like, oh, I need them to convey this information. I need them to give this location. But to get there, to make small talk, to let them have a personality, I'm not going to script that.
No.
Because if anything, then it becomes a bit more wooden, a little more slow. If I'm looking down at my notes, it breaks character immersion for them. I don't know why.
Then it becomes, when you get the repetition of a character in Skyrim, when you walk back up to the bar and he goes, hello again.
Yeah, exact same stuff. The Owl's men left this note, take a look, for every single bounty.
Yeah.
The stuff like that.
Yeah.
It just gets really simple. So I find even like, sometimes the books have a really good description of a place and I will want to use it, but every time I look down to check my notes or check the book, it takes me out of it just enough to stop my flow or at least slow me down.
Yeah.
So all of that, most descriptions and almost all NPC dialogue is absolutely like, you have to know how to do it. You have to learn it, because realistically, even if you're bad at improv, do you really want to script every possible thing they're going to ask you? Doesn't matter, you can't do that. There's no way you can do that with the average D&D party. Just think of the amount of stuff they did. Like, for the Magma of Malevolence, the whole point of the campaign is stopping an eldritch monster's egg from hatching. And my party decided it was a space chicken. Just because the in-game characters didn't know what it was. So like, oh, it's some weird magic thing. I don't know what that is. Must be from space. I know an animal. It's a chicken, and that's what it was. You cannot script for stuff like that. So you have to be able to react to it. Because otherwise it's just, you're stuck.
Yeah.
You can't do anything. So learning how to do that was tricky, but at the same time, it's such a necessity. It's not like it's a daunting task to avoid. You're in there, just
and
talk.
How did you teach yourself?
Just talk. Genuinely, just try and put yourself in their shoes. Like, I don't know how to react to this. Yeah, they wouldn't either. Just try and get through it. What do they want? They want the characters to stay focused on the mission, try and bring it back to that, and just genuinely try and react as naturally as possible while keeping the character's goal in mind. Whatever the character may be, find whatever their goal is, even if they don't care. Like, from the distance, like if it's a quest giver, what quest do they want you to do? If it's a guard, they want you to stop whatever you're doing or help with whatever they need. If it's a blacksmith, they want you to buy their stuff. Mm-hmm. Whatever it is, just try and swing it back as best you can, as people do in real life. Most conversations like that are going to be awkward. That's fine. It makes it feel more real. It doesn't have to be cinematic with every single conversation. Sometimes you're genuinely going to go, the fuck are you on about? Both in character and out. But if it fits, because realistically, with half the stuff D&D parties do, that's a perfectly valid reaction. And as long as it isn't awkward, like, for the actual party members, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah, no. Okay, I understand, and I've seen you. I've clearly heard you say those words, but I've also seen you pull that face. Arch. So interesting. So I'm going to throw some things at you, and you can expand on these,
okay,
or disagree with them, or add to them. So I thought what would be interesting. It's fascinating to hear your take on doing X and Y and making it flow and making it work, because we didn't go and play the casino games, which you thought we didn't. We're a rubbish crew, because we didn't actually check out anything apart from the map. We didn't actually do a recce. while playing. We didn't do the sneaking around to figure out the rules before we press go. We just press go.
I mean, you technically played all but 2, but
No, I mean, we didn't.
Just
We
by
walked
chance.
in and kind of just got on with it.
Yeah.
And no, there's no recce, there's no pre-planning.
Which is fair enough. What I want to do next time is kind of lengthen it out a bit, because we've been playing them as they are one-shots.
Yeah.
So next time I want to kind of give the option of, like, we don't have to finish, you don't have to get on with it. And then just like, yeah, we will have a break and continue.
Well, actually, the DM and me goes, the point where the boss said, I know you all don't work here.
Yeah.
Would have been a great cliffhanger.
Yeah.
To kind of go, shit! And then I could have had to think about how do I get out of the situation. You as the DM could have thought about how to make it harder for me.
Yeah.
But giving you time to kind of expand on that scene and develop that scene and then kind of go, what reward can I give him? The one you gave him is fine.
Yeah.
But actually, yeah, having it so, because there's no rush, we're all having fun.
Yeah.
I never run. I'm famous both on this podcast and not for not running one shots.
Yeah.
I run 2 or 3 shots because I just.
I'm surprised we've managed to get both done in one, to be honest. I did not expect us to.
I mean, admittedly, we did play for 5 hours.
Yeah, no, but
food break in the middle.
we fully commit to it, but yeah.
It was really interesting. So one of the things I wanted to do as a DM to DM, is offer some insight as to, because you were talking about when I asked you how you learned to improv.
Yeah.
You went, just do it. Just do it. It's that
Just
Shia
do it.
LaBeouf thing. But I've got a bunch of tips here.
Yeah.
That we can add to, that we can offer people as a starter for 10. I'm going to rattle through them.
Yeah.
And then you can comment.
Sure.
Add your thoughts, and I will add my thoughts too. So these are not in any particular order. There isn't a golden number of 10. There isn't a golden number of top 5. These are just ramblings of a man and his bearded son. So, number 1. When you get in a situation, you're playing a game, don't panic.
I mean, yeah, no notes really. If you start to...
No notes, but I'll give some.
No, it's just, I agree. It's just, if you're going to go off the rails, it's going to be obvious. Like, even if you need to take a minute to just go, okay, like, it's fine to just have that moment and just sit, but the moment you start frantically going, oh, I have to fill the silence is going to be worse.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think one of the things just comes from experience. The first time anyone runs a game and they're thrown off guard by something, you kind of go, "Ugh!" And there's the classic, every DM in the universe has imposter syndrome. At the end of the game, was it good enough? Did people have fun? What did I get wrong? You focus on all that nonsense. But by the time you've been playing for a while, you kind of get used to the fact that, okay, that wasn't my best bit, but that was brilliant. I really liked that. This party, various from table to table, don't like this. These people like this. But I watched the stream last night, and it was watching. I'm going to run it with you, Delta Green.
Yeah.
And the entire episode was them sat in a hotel room looking over their notes to figure out what was going on. That's all it was.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating to watch as they solved the clues, apart from one player who you could see on the stream. It was a stream on YouTube where one player and the GM noticed that he went, everyone's having fun, it's great, apart from so-and-so.
Yeah.
And he wasn't being fun, but it clearly wasn't his cup of tea. The guy who was just a bit bored or a bit couldn't focus wanted the action, this bit wasn't for him.
I found that in our party, because you don't like combat as much because it gets repetitive. There's a couple of people I've known that, but Nif, for example, they enjoy combat.
Yeah.
And like they almost exclusively play barbarian, so they enjoy just lobbing themselves at someone and swinging an axe at them.
Yes, it's the bit I've discovered. I like combat the least.
Yeah, it doesn't mean it's bad, but it's like you will prefer to get properly stuck into like the role playing aspects, not necessarily just being talked at, but like being involved in more than just I'm going to punch him, and it makes you feel you're doing something. So finding the balance, it's interesting.
So number 1, don't panic. And I think off the back of that, as I said, every DM in the world, every GM in the world has imposter syndrome. So just assume everyone's having fun, because if they weren't sat around your table, and you can check in once a campaign, you can check in once every now and then, but people will tell you if they're not having fun, either talking with their feet, and by that I mean stopping coming, or telling you with words. So just assume, and if things go off piste. Another thing, number 2, be flexible. If a map says there are 10 bad guys over there, or only 1 bad guy over there, and you need more than 1 or less than 10, change it.
Yeah, I mean, again, it kind of my one like full thing throughout this is it is whatever it is, and always has been whatever you say it is.
Yeah,
you have the full power of retconning because they don't know any different.
And it's really interesting because I started. It wasn't until I've been DMing for years now, but there was a certain point when my brain logically told me I was cheating if I changed what was in the room.
Yeah.
No, it's just homebrew.
Yeah, I mean,
and it's not cheating. My brain was going, you can't do that. And I don't want to fudge roles for players necessarily, and I don't want to make an OP bad guy. I mean, there are different things, but it's not cheating to change what's in a book if you're running a campaign or a module. You're allowed to, and this is meant to be a top not 10 list for people who are starting out or think they'd like to have a go. But also, improv is scary. But you don't need to worry about sticking to specifics.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything to add?
Not particularly. I've thought of another thing for the list. But
I'll take it now. No, because there's no particular...
Yeah, one thing that I got reminded of. I think I remember it might have been Brennan Lee Mulligan talking about it on a podcast episode he did.
He's a very good...
He is a very... Did you see his latest thing? They did a stadium game with
Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, I think he's my favourite.
They are,
GM.
Yeah, they are very good. Him and obviously Critical Role, they're just really good at like somehow getting a crowd involved with something they cannot get involved. Like they're just really good at conveying the energy. Like they genuinely get the excitement across. But one thing I'm pretty sure he said once was, as a DM, at the end of the day, rule of cool takes out almost everything else. If a player goes like, yeah, I'm going to sprint at this guy, jump off the rock, and then hit him across the face, I don't care if you have enough movement. Like, if you're like 5 feet away from that being successful, I'm going to let you do it. If you come up with a really cool plan, it's like, oh, that wouldn't work because, I don't know, this one random like bit of rope is like, I don't know, 10 feet too short, or this one guard is written as like really stubborn. Suddenly that guard's not stubborn. Suddenly that grappling hook reaches across. Suddenly the fireball is going to fit through that window. If it is good enough and you can really tell that the players are really invested in it, if they're really proud of it, if it's just going to be a cool moment, you're hurting yourself and your players by being, committed to the rules too much.
Well, yeah, I've in fact, written a similar thing down in my list. I remember once in a campaign I ran, the heroes were in the last vault of this last room, and the last bad guy was a white dragon. Or I can't remember what colour dragon he was, but he was a dragon. And he was OP, and if they tried to fight him, they were not level. They weren't low level; they were mid level because it had been a 2-year campaign. But there was no way if they fought this thing, they were going to really win. And Louis, the player, he rolled well. I think he rolled a natural. It wasn't a natural; it was a very high roll, a persuasion roll to calm the dragon down before it kicked off. And he sat there and he quoted Black Widow from the Avengers when the sun's getting real low to calm Hulk down, and he said it as a banter, and then he rolled like a dirty 20 or a natural 20, and I thought technically wouldn't work by the rules in inverted commas, but that's the best moment, and you're improving and you're getting involved and you're trying. He was getting more and more and more comfortable throughout the campaign. It was the closing. Yeah, you can have that.
The absolute peak is like if a player's really invested, if they really like it, if they are really putting themselves out there and they're choosing to get involved, especially if they've been nervous, giving them that as a reward for like going out their comfort zone will mean so much more than them doing it off whatever rule number 200 billion. It's just going to mean more. It's going to be better.
And in principle, I think with the rule of cool kind of thing, you will know if you're playing with a table whether there's a table for you or not. I've played at tables where we've gone, not for me.
Yeah.
And other people have played at my table and gone, not for me. And we've genuinely politely part of the company and gone, that's absolutely fine. You don't like the way I run games. It's no skin off my nose. So, but you will find the table that suits you. So if someone is a rules meister or likes to I can't stand metagaming. Can't stand
min-maxing. Yeah, in D&D it just doesn't really work.
It's just stop. It's not fun. There's no story there. You're just playing.
You pass every single roll. It's like, okay, why did you bother turning up?
Yeah, you're playing a board game.
It's like using back to video games because of course it's, but like using hacks in games, especially single player games. Like, what is the fun? Because like we've all, if you ever go back to a game in New Game Plus and like you absolutely destroy every single enemy, it's just not fun. And I can never really put my finger on if it's just lack of progression or like there's no challenge, but like you're not actually doing anything.
No.
So
you're just marching through. So you'll find your table, and if you're all of the symbols mindset, then rule of cool will be like, and you're right, let people own it because then they're encouraged to try something else.
And then it encourages other players to do the same thing.
Yeah. And also, if you can, I'm just thinking this on the fly, if you can encourage people to learn if you're playing, just using D&D as an example, but any game, if you get them to learn how wizarding works, as a DM, make them in charge of that, then they can own that and improvise off that, and you don't have interesting.
It's really interesting. I've seen stuff to do with that, and it's like the only thing with that is to be careful you don't go too far. One thing I saw was, and again, it's all about finding your table. But one thing I saw, and again, this is all the players just RPing, so it's all improvised and all that stuff. I heard a story about a party where there was one person whose family been killed by wizards or warlocks or whatever, so the character canonically really hated magic.
Right.
And was like, I think the original idea was they would slowly warm up to it and that would be like their redemption arc. And then there was a wizard who was really proud of their academia and all that. So they kept going, they RP'd, this campaign had been going on for a little bit, and then they got into some kind of argument, again, in-game, where the magic hater threatened to destroy the wizard spellbook. Which is if you don't know wizard spellbooks in D&D, if they don't have that, they're
That's
cooked.
how they cast
Yeah,
magic.
their power is gone, at least temporarily, until they can get a new one or some kind of ulterior. And the wizard player essentially thought, oh yeah, no, this is going to be part of the RP, we're going to find our way around it. But their character, through some method or another, pissed off the magic hater, and sure enough, he canonically destroyed the spellbook, and the DM allowed it. Because, they said they were going to do it if he did it again. But then continued to the point where they was like, yeah, no, you don't have any power anymore. Your spellbook was gone. And it's like, well, what the fuck am I supposed to do? And I don't think they ever finished the campaign because one of their characters was written out while not even dying.
Yeah.
And I think because it was from the perspective of the wizard, the story, so he left. But as much as that's improv and maybe even a cool moment for the magic hater, it's just stupid.
That would have required the wizard to go and get a new book and start from scratch.
Yeah, it's rule of cool for one character, but overall, it's just it's come back to the age old of if you have to justify it by saying it's what my character does while another player is in tears, then you've prioritized wrong.
Yeah, and that's how you're absolutely right. And another GM tips will be how to not make your characters cry.
Yeah,
because it's a whole podcast in itself.
The whole point,
episode.
Some people take it really seriously, and you can take any role-playing game as seriously as you want. But the key word is forever and always going to be game, which is the only purpose of which is to have fun. You're not winning any prizes, you're not getting any money, you're never going to be a fucking millionaire based off of how well you can do a fucking Dragonborn voice. No. If you're making everyone else at the table hate you, I hate to say it, that's going to continue once you get up from the table.
Yeah.
And you're getting nothing for it.
So let's be gentle with each other. I've written down here, keep trying, and I don't say this flippantly. If it doesn't work the first time, and by this I mean improv, like any skill, it takes practice. The first time I improv around a table and I was put on the spot, I actually made a complete fool of myself. Yeah. I can remember it to this day. I needed 2 NPCs. There's a horse and a man. The horse was one they needed to speak to because it was a magic creature. And I just decided animal husbandry should be involved in animal fucking. Mm-hmm. And it was weird. And I don't know why I did it. And even now I think, what was I thinking? But it didn't stop me. I felt like a fool. Yeah. I felt silly for the rest of that evening. But I kept going with the storyline. Because there were a couple. It was just ludicrous. But I kept going. But anyway, the next week I moved on. And we kept playing. And then you basically get used to it. So it's not comfortable at first when you improv. But absolutely... like any muscle that you use, any skill that you learn, playing D&D, improvising on the fly as your character, improvising as a DM or GM, it just takes practice if you don't do it. In fact, I've had a break off in the summer, for example, and I tend to play weekly. I'd break over summer holidays as people do, or over Christmas, and you kind of go, what am I doing? Where am I? How am I? Last night I was playing Alien going, what are we rolling now? Because I played... Anyway, so do just keep trying. I've written here, as a common sense one, as a DM or a GM, have 2 or 3 NPCs on hand. They can bounce around and be relevant for any situation. They don't have to be, and this is common sense, but if you have 2 or 3 people on hand, little Jimmy, little Johnny, little Ruth, that you can just use wherever. You don't have to use them all, but if they're next to you, then when someone says, who's at the bar? You can go, it's John Smith, and he's got a really boring generic name, but he then...
Yeah, I like to expand on that. I like having someone that's not necessarily useful, but someone that the players will be happy to see. Not necessarily just familiar faces. I use it in our campaign with Silver, but he just pops up and he's just a friendly bloke. He doesn't need to be more than that. He's just entertaining. And if the
Comfort.
comfort NPCs, favorite NPCs, and like there's the classic trope of like, oh, he's the villain in the end, or they die or whatever. But sometimes just having someone where every now and then, if it's slowing down a bit, if you need to fill it out, it's like, oh, well, I need to go on a shopping trip. Let's just get some chores done. Like the campaign's at a slow point, then you can just go, oh, you meet blank, and it's just a little pick me up, a little something, just to have in your back pocket. Because building up and getting people to like NPCs or like characters will take a little bit. So there's no reason not to commit to one, regardless of how you fit them in. Like, there's no reason to not immediately just have that one favoured bloke somewhere in the story.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got here another one. If you need to slow it down to delay... again, from a GM perspective, you can delay the gratification. So by that I mean, I remember playing a game once where I went to the town and I wanted to go to a blacksmith's. And the GM said there wasn't a blacksmith. And I realised afterwards because they weren't prepared for the blacksmith.
Yeah.
So rather than create... And I said what I wanted to try and go to the blacksmith to create. And I was... and I think I threw them. And rather than go, yes, just not yet, they went, no. So there just wasn't a blacksmith, which canonically, in a D&D world, a city without a blacksmith is illogical. And it took me more anyway.
Yeah, it's like a city without a super.
So actually, a technique for me in that situation, if I was GMing and GMing moving forward, is you may there's the thing. It's either going to take this amount of time or this amount of money, which is out of the player's reach at that point. But that at least gives them a sense of ownership to figure out. Yes, it's possible. It's not yet.
Yeah, instead of a no, give them a not yet. Give them almost, even if you have to stop them fully, try and change it to incentive rather than refuse.
And that will also delay gratification. That means that you've got time as a DM to figure out by 2 or 3 sessions time, to look at it, to study it between games, to map it out, plan it. Yes, I can do this if you're thrown, rather than rifling through the book. It costs this much, blah blah. But as a player, you're right. Delaying gratification. Say yes, well done again for improvising this weird thing that I don't know how to make or create, but it's a really cool idea. Just bear with me. But if you do it in game, it's like, I could do that for you. It's going to cost you 1,000 gold.
Yeah,
you're never going to have 1,000 gold if you're starting a campaign. Or you, as a GM, you will know how much they've got. We keep bouncing back to D&D, but this works for any of them, but any game. But So it's rather than saying no, say just not yet. Just do it within game and within a playing perspective. If you need to slow down for your backstory, or if you need to slow down because you haven't quite thought about what your kid's called and why he died, okay, you could improvise silence because you're still mourning the death of your kid, and you refuse to talk about it because you're refusing to talk about it in game, and then you can, at the end of the session, go away and think about that story you haven't quite made up yet. I think we mentioned this earlier, but I'll rattle through it. If your player needs to learn something, why does that have to be just in gameplay? So if you were expecting your players, and again from a GM, this is GM tips, if you're expecting them to go to this bar to see this barmaid to talk about this clue, and they never go to that bar, well, okay, just give them the clue somewhere else. Did they get the clue from the stable hand?
Yeah.
When they get the horses to leave town, there's nothing that says you have to be rigid in one place.
That said, thinking about it, I do agree, but I also think that you can, with some of these things, I think it's okay to reverse them in certain situations. So with the information can be in a lot of places.
Yeah.
Yes, until it's like vital. For example, if there was, I don't know, if there was a lich somewhere, and in order to find out where his phylactery was, you needed to go to his tomb and like speak with dead to one of, like, I don't know, his tomb guards or his family, whatever. It's still okay if you need to have that crucial story point, but instead of being so like oh, you can't find the information, find something that kind of draws them back to it.
Yeah.
Instead of being like, oh no, you just can't find it.
Yes. Yeah, it's a different way around improvising.
If you can't move it, just give it a different step until you get to it.
Yeah. It might take longer.
Yeah.
It may take an extra session, or it may dip into a new session when you thought they'd get there.
But that's fine. That can be on the players. That can just be part of the journey if they choose to go a different route. Because let's be honest, if you don't have at least one like plan B in D&D, you're not going to go anywhere. And in other RPGs, I'm actually not too far off from that either.
No, absolutely. And from a practical, all-encompassing, this is my last point. Unless you've got...
I got one more.
Go on, and I'll get my last point ready.
My last one would be, as a game master, in almost any situation, if it's clear that a player is doing something that A, upsets another player, or just isn't a good idea, or something like that, or it's just going wrong, you can find ways to say no. If you need to actually roleplay it and just go, oh, sorry, this isn't an option in whatever way you need to, or if, like the story I told earlier, where the player's just being a bit of a dick, even if they don't mean to be, or even if it's another like, oh, my character would do it, just if you need to actually take them aside and be like, yo, can we not? Sometimes that's necessary. Sometimes it's awkward. Sometimes you're taking away a little bit of the freedom from the players. But if it's making it worse, there's no reason for you to tolerate it, or more importantly, making your players tolerate it.
No.
It's not like it's that important, but to some degree, you have some responsibility of all of your players enjoying it. So if you're being lenient for one at the cost of the others, it's on you to stop them.
Yeah.
It should be up to you, and it's okay for that to be up to you, and to just kind of go, yeah, hang on a minute. This either isn't going the way I want, or you're not being fun for the rest of us, or this it just like isn't going to work out. Sometimes it's okay, you can work it into another route. Like I said, it's good to have a plan B, but if realistically you don't have a choice, sometimes it's alright to just be like, yeah, I mean, you look around town for other jobs to do, but there's just no other bounties available. It looks like you're going to have to go to this one if you're going to pay off the whatever. Like, it's okay to just kind of like, we've all steered someone's like, oh, this particular book on the shelf is so much shinier than the others. We've all kind of held their hand sometimes. But if you need to be slightly forceful without telling them specifically to stop, you don't have to feel bad about that necessarily.
No, absolutely. And I agree. Yeah, if you need to shoehorn in some boundaries.
Yeah. It's like the only example I can think of is like when I stopped you from sneaking in, like we were talking about earlier. It's like, yeah, no, you're going back out to the tournament. That isn't stopping you from going to the vote necessarily. And we can talk about delayed gratification with that one as well. But it is saying, no, you're not progressing this way yet. It's just not happening.
Yeah. My last thought on improv as a whole for both players and GMs is try it out in different settings. So by that I mean the other games you can play that are very... I know lots of professional GMs have said things like go to improv classes, acting classes. Which clearly, your average Joe could find some, but it seems less few and far between them, particularly in the middle of Hampshire, for example.
Yeah.
So, one thing you can do is do things like play other games. There's a game, for example, called YASP, which stands for You Awaken in a Strange Place. And you approach this game and you arrive at this game with none of the players have preparation done. You don't actually pick the GM until you start playing. And then you improvise the setting. I can't remember the order, and I've got the notes in the other room because I thought I transferred them to this machine and I haven't. But you awaken in a strange place. You roll a dice. The one with the highest number picks the genre of that's it. For the highest number, you roll a d6. The highest number goes first all the way down to the lowest. Obviously, the first person chooses the genre that the story is going to be set in. So whether it's a crime, a thriller, a mystery, fantasy, whatever. And they're deciding then and there, and it's on that one player to choose that. The next person rolls for an adjective, I believe it is. And it's literally just whatever. It could be theatre, violence. And all of a sudden it's going to become a violent theatre production, potentially. And then there's another one, which escapes me. But it means that you get to make it up literally on the fly. No one knows what's coming. And then you create the game and you create the world together, which then will just strengthen your skills so that then you can go and do things like play D&D and know that you're more confident making stuff up. My improv, both as a player and a GM, is improved just by doing it more and actually being in a safe space to look silly. My horse saga, wherever will in my brain go down in history, but my friends were safe with me and it was a safe space to make a fool of myself. So try it out in different settings. Equally, don't do this. I went to a wedding once where we challenged a friend of mine many moons ago to go and sit at a table with a bunch of old ladies and start a conversation with the line that we gave him. The line that we gave this man was, "So have you ever considered scuba diving? I'm looking for some advice." And he continued a 20-minute conversation with three old ladies with that one line. So, thank you, old ladies. Whoever you are, you're probably dead by now. It's 30 years ago.
Christ. They could be scuba diving, you never know.
Scuba diving. Improv, all the time. Any chance you get, because then if you make it up on the fly, just give it a go. What's the worst that can happen? You make a horse. Make horse. We'll call it that. You know?
Yeah, all right.
See, I'm improvising now.
Yeah,
I'm probably wrong. But I'm in safe company, so I'm going to feel fine.
You're in the company of the internet. You're cooked.
Well, thank you for your guidance through your game and your thoughts on Improv.
You're so welcome.
Thank you for improvising this episode with me. If you've got any tips that you particularly find that you do as a GM or a player that gets you in the space to make things up on the fly, and you've got things that you've tried and we haven't mentioned, stick them in the comments, either on the YouTube or on Spotify or on the other places that you listen to this.
Spotify has comments?
Yes, actually it does. Yes.
Actually didn't know that.
Yes. Thank you very much. Let us know what your thoughts are. Next time, hopefully Adam will be back and we'll record. In fact, I think you're coming back for
Yeah, I'll be coming back for that.
We won't mention it. Spoilers. We'll make it up on the fly. Have a good Saturday night, Toby.
Thanks. Everyone else can have whatever time it is now.
Yes. And on that note, because Adam's not here and he refuses to, we need to sing our way out.
We do?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you've got the choice. It's got to be a Leonard song.
Oh.
Well, it doesn't have to be, but it's going to be. You're going to improv this. So it can either be Bilbo, because Adam hates it, this will make it feel better.
Oh, perfect, yeah.
Or If I Have a Hammer.
No, we'll go with Bilbo. If Adam hates it, that's even better.
Okay. In the middle of the earth, in the land of the shy, you're not singing along, it's making me perspire.
I was going to wait until you got to a certain point and be a backup singer.
Bilbo,
Bilbo Baggins, the greatest little hobbit of them all.
Feel better, Adam. See you later, all. Bye!